Support for this podcast comes from Is Business Broken, a podcast from BU Questrom School of Business. Stick around until the end of this podcast for a preview of a recent episode about why innovation in healthcare is so hard.
WBUR Podcasts, Boston.
Lloyd Schwartz, WBUR contributing arts critic, among so many other things, which we will get to. Thank you so much for joining us on The Common today.
Thanks, Daryl. Really happy to be here.
So we got you here to talk about classical music and to get some recommendations from you for folks to get to know classical music in the greater Boston area. But before we jump into that, I'm going to give you 3 scenarios in everyday life. And I want you to pick a composition that goes with that scenario.
Okay, I'll try.
Are you ready?
Ready.
All right, here we go. Give me a classical piece for a long walk.
That would be a Mahler symphony.
A Mahler symphony.
Mahler Symphony number 4, because it's out in nature and it's very leisurely and it's long and it's beautiful and it's very calming.
Next one, a breakup.
Oh, how about the Tchaikovsky Romeo and Juliet Overture? It's very romantic, and you might be nostalgic for the time that your relationship was really flourishing.
Mm-hmm.
It might increase your melancholy to think about the joy that you once lived through. And of course, Romeo and Juliet doesn't have a happy ending.
And now this one, something a little happier, hopefully.
Okay.
A Sunday morning.
Sunday morning. How about the Grieg Peer Gynt Suite? Peer Gynt is a play, is a Norwegian play, quite famous but not done in this country very often. But the music is great.
Okay, now we're going to jump into the interview and I'm going to do my intro. I'm Daryl C. Murphy, and you're listening to The Common. WBUR contributing arts critic Lloyd Schwartz. I cannot continue without mentioning the many, many things you do in addition to your role here as a contributor to our WBUR Arts Desk. It would just be plain disrespectful. So first, I got to say, you are an author. You have written many poetry books. You're a Pulitzer Prize winning writer. You are the Poet Laureate for Somerville. And you are a professor emeritus at UMass Boston. And you are the classical music critic for Fresh Air.
Yeah.
And I wish we had more time to cover all those things, but we got you here to talk about one of your many passions, that being classical music, and the spring arts guide that you wrote for WBUR Arts Desk. My first question for you is this. You have been covering classical music for decades now. Do you ever get bored of the genre?
Not of the genre.
Mm-hmm.
I can get bored with a performance and, something I hear that just really almost literally puts me to sleep. It's possible. But in terms of the music itself, no, never. I can't even imagine it because I just love it so much and it's so deeply a part of my life and really has been since I was a little kid.
Yeah, take me back to that first moment where you heard classical and realized, oh, I love this.
Yeah, well, my parents were not especially musical, but my mother loved music and she had an old record. And we played it, and it was Tchaikovsky. It was very tuneful. It was very dramatic, and I just wanted to listen to it over and over again. I must have been, 3.
Do you remember the piece?
Yeah, it's a kind of corny piece because it's a kind of military march, but it's very tuneful, called March Slav, S-L-A-V. I could even hum a few bars. Dum, 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 dum. And then when I was in elementary school, there was a music appreciation segment of the class, and we listened to short pieces of classical music, all of which I just adored. And I would sing them to myself. I would hear them in my head. I would try to get my mother to take me to a record store and look for the records so that I could play them at home.
And where was this? Was this in Massachusetts?
No, it was in, first it was in Brooklyn, in New York, and then in Queens. And I came to this part of the world to go to graduate school. And then I never wanted to leave.
School got you, like so many.
Yeah, school and really great music in Boston.
For people who want to get into classical, what is a go-to piece that you start them off with?
Mozart's Sonata in E flat, K481.
I gotta ask you this.
Yeah.
We talked prior to this interview today, and I know you said you don't get to listen to too much newer music, but you mentioned you like the song Count Me Out from Kendrick Lamar.
One of these lives, I'ma make these right with the wrongs I done. That's when I unite with the Father, Son, till then I fight. Rain on me, put the blame on me. Got guilt, got hurt, got shame on me.
And I find that really interesting, and I would love to hear you talk about that.
I mean, of course, I was aware of Kendrick Lamar and
fellow Pulitzer Prize winner.
And, I'm in good company. You had mentioned him to me. In terms of the most recent popular music, I don't have a lot of time to just stop everything and try to learn something new or hear something new. Mm-hmm. But you were so enthusiastic about him.
Oh,
you
was
were.
I? Wow.
And that made me want to explore that. I just so happened to go to YouTube. And I thought this was just wonderful. The melody was so pretty. It had a real melody. Yeah. And then it had the rap stuff and the barrage of words coming at you. And it wasn't just one or the other, but it was one and then the other, or both of them overlapping in some way. And that I found really interesting. And that reminded me of what I love about classical music.
All right. So right now, I feel like this is a good place to take a break.
Okay.
But when we get back, I'm going to get some recommendations from you from the Spring Arts Guide that you wrote for the Arts Desk. Okay. So we'll be right back.
All right.
I love when you count me out. I love when you count me out. I love when you count me out.
Support for this podcast comes from Is Business Broken, a podcast from BU Questrom School of Business, which asks in a recent episode, how do we build trust in employee pay?
Employees really want to know is the process by which they are paid fair.
Follow Is Business Broken wherever you get your podcasts, and stick around until the end of this podcast for a preview of the episode.
And we're back with WBUR contributing arts critic Lloyd Schwartz. Lloyd, as I mentioned before, you wrote a Spring Arts Guide for classical music here in the greater Boston area. It's a very exhaustive list. You got the orchestras, the operas, choral music, chamber music. You got it in there. And I would really love for you to quickly give us 3 of your favorites from that list.
One thing I would suggest, I mean, everybody knows about the Boston Symphony Orchestra, but there's another really wonderful orchestra in Boston called the Boston Philharmonic. And the conductor, the musician who leads the orchestra, who has just turned 86 years old, but you would never know it because he has so much energy and vitality.
Benjamin Zanders, the 86-year-old composer.
The conductor.
Excuse me.
And he is, this spring, he is conducting at Symphony Hall. So the sound is going to be fantastic. And he's conducting Mahler's Second Symphony, which is called the Resurrection Symphony. If anyone is going to do a good job with this symphony, it's Benjamin Zander and the Boston Philharmonic. This is what they are really famous for.
And what are the dates?
The dates are, there's only one performance, and it's April 18th at Symphony Hall.
Resurrection, Good Friday, just in time.
Right.
Okay, give us another.
All right. So this is going to be on a smaller scale. A Russian American pianist named Sergei Shepkin, who is one of my favorite living musicians, is doing a concert in which only he is playing. It's a piano concert. The special piece on the program is a piece by Schumann, Robert Schumann, called Carnival. And it's one of the really all-time great piano pieces, and it's both delightful and extremely tuneful, very melodic, funny, sad, he's heartbroken, he's in love, all of this expressing itself on the piano keyboard. And it's at the First Church in Boston on May 9th.
Okay. All right. Hit us with a third.
The third is a visiting Baroque orchestra. Baroque music is essentially from the 17th and 18th century. It's really old music. They call it early music. And one of the really great performing groups in the world is coming to Boston to visit for one performance. It has a French name, Les Arts Florissants, which means the flourishing of the arts, the flowering of the arts. And they are going to be playing one of the most beloved and delightful pieces of music ever written, and it's Vivaldi's Four Seasons.
I think I know that one.
I think you might. These are absolutely wonderful performers, really some of the great performers of this kind of music in the world, and we're so lucky that they're coming to Boston. I think they haven't been here in a while.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited about that. And they are coming on April 4th to Jordan Hall at the New England Conservatory.
So, Lloyd, before we go, do you have any free events that folks can check out?
Yeah, I would say there's at least one that's on a very high level, and It's the series Music for Food.
Mm-hmm.
And it's on April 13th at New England Conservatory's Williams Hall. That's in the same building as Jordan Hall, their big concert hall. And these are top-level professional musicians who are donating their time to raise money for a different food group every season. This year, it's the Women's Lunch Place. And they're giving an extremely interesting concert of 20th century and 21st century music. I do want to mention something, though, having to do with money or no money.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, there's so much going on in Boston. There are a lot of free concerts,
Mm-hmm.
but there are, concerts that student performances, and we have so many absolute world-class, first-rate music conservatories, so that, you might say, oh, do I want to hear students play, Mozart or Stravinsky? And the answer is yes, you do, because these students are exceptionally good.
Understood. Well, Lloyd, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for talking to us about, one of your passions, classical music. This was great. Thank you so much for coming through to The Common.
Thank you, Daryl. Thank you for inviting me and giving me a chance to sound off about something that I really love.
Oh, yeah. It's what we do here.
And it was great to talk to you. I really thank you for your interest.
Oh, yeah. Truly a pleasure. That's WBUR contributing arts critic Lloyd Schwartz. And that's our show for today. Thank you so much for listening to The Common, which is produced by myself and Franny Monahan. It's mixed by Marquise Neal, with help this week from Emily Jankowski, and it's edited by Yasmin Ammer, and our theme music is Me from Hisu. And from the newsroom of WBUR, I'm your host, Daryl C. Murphy. I'll talk to you next week.
Support for this podcast comes from Is Business Broken, a podcast from BU Questrom School of Business. A recent episode looks at innovation in healthcare. Why is it so hard? Listen on for a preview. Here's Jim Rebitzer, author of the book Why Not Better and Cheaper? Healthcare and Innovation.
So, antibiotics are essential to modern medicine. You basically can't do cancer treatment or dental treatment or all kinds of stuff without effective antibiotics.
It's one of the best things about living in the 20th and 21st centuries.
It's one of the best things about living in the 20th, 21st century. And the reason we're talking about antibiotics is not only because they're very valuable, but the pipeline of antibiotics has become dangerously thin. Bacteria evolve resistance to antibiotics. We need to be constantly developing new ones.
So strong need, strong benefit.
Strong need, strong benefit. But the incentives for developing new antibiotics come from the patent system. And the patent system does something remarkable. What it does is it says, if you develop something that people want to use, you get a monopoly on that for a time-limited monopoly, you as the innovator, and you get to charge a high price for 10, 20 years. And the lovely thing about that is it rewards innovations not because some influential scientist thinks they're important or a government bureaucrat falls in love with the technology, but because people are actually using it. They're buying it, right? And so you'd think that with that kind of incentive system and reward structure, that developing new antibiotics would be a very profitable business because everybody wants to use them. But we have this paradox, this puzzle, that the pipeline has become very, very, very thin over the last 20, 30 years. They're almost guaranteed money losers. So what is that? What's going on there? The answer has to do with the incentives in the patent system. The market test in the patent system has this great feature that nobody makes any money unless people want to use it. But what's the first thing you do if you develop a new antibiotic? You try not to use it, because every time you use it, there's a risk that the bugs will develop resistance to the new antibiotics.
Find the full episode by searching for Is Business Broken wherever you get your podcasts, and learn more about the Mehrotra Institute for Business, Markets, and Society at ibms.bu.edu.